Recovery Sort of is a podcast where we discuss recovery and addiction topics from the perspective of people living in long-term recovery. This podcast does not intend to represent the views of any particular group, organization, or fellowship. The views expressed here are solely the opinion of its contributors. Be advised there may be strong language or topics of an adult nature. Hi, this is Billy. I'm here with Jason for
What's up?
this week's Recovery Sort of. Going to kick it off talking a little bit about some anxiety and some issues I struggle with around anxiety, learning kind of what that is and how it affects me in my daily life. Most recently, we took a trip up to Massachusetts to visit. My stepdaughter lives up there, and we went up there to spend Thanksgiving. And during the trip, I realized we didn't really have a heavily scheduled itinerary or anything. It was just kind of go up and spend time together hanging out. We got to stay in this hotel resort thing, and we had, puzzles and games, and, they have a pool and stuff there, and we figured we'd just chill out and kind of have easy, relaxing days. And what I noticed for me is that having unplanned or unscheduled time is just uncomfortable, and I start sitting in my head thinking what I could be doing, what I should be doing, what I don't want to do, and creates a lot of anxiety. And so, with my family, the way that comes off is I'm irritable and annoyed and don't want to be around them, which half the time in those situations is true. That is how I'm feeling in the moment. I just want to be left alone. I don't want to do anything, and I want everyone not to talk to me, which is a really difficult place to be when you're stuck in a hotel room with 5 other people on a family vacation. So I try the best that I can not to sort of give into it. What I found this trip is I took a couple opportunities to just sneak off down to the exercise room. They have an exercise room with weights and stuff. And I said, well, I'll just go down there and kind of work out and try to just burn off some of that anxiety. But for me, that's kind of a new realization, I would say, within the last year or two, that I struggle with anxiety. I never really quite understood what that was. I do know I used to just realize that I thought a lot about things and that my head kind of went in 57 directions, and that, it kind of everything felt like a fire drill all the time. When any sort of minor issues came up, it's like a fire drill in my head of like, what are we going to do and how are we going to fix it? What do we got to And I just thought that was, again, that was normal to me. So I thought that was kind of normal. And as I've been in recovery, I've learned that's not really that normal. And there's some things that I've learned to do about them. One of them that helps a lot is meditation. I believe exercise helps a lot as well. Just helps me to burn off some of that, whatever, excess mental energy. But it's something that I've struggled with. And so this trip, and I think it has a lot to do with the amount of meditating I've been doing lately. This trip, I really tried to sit with those feelings. Like when I was feeling like annoyed and irritable and angry for, in essence, no reason whatsoever. What is, why do I feel that way and what's going on? And try to sit and be present in that anger and annoyance to find out sort of the causes of it. And so that's a side benefit of meditation. One of the things I've learned from meditation to do is kind of sit with those uncomfortable feelings and feel them and look at them and recognize them and be like, yeah, this is what I'm feeling, and that's okay. And in that, I learned that I should still just plan myself itineraries for things, even if they're rough. And now the trick is I have to be flexible and they have to be a little bit up in the air, but just to have a plan, even if it's just for myself, of what I'm going to do with my day, what my next thing's going to be, what my, what my plan is for that day, so that I don't get stuck in those situations.
Oh man, yeah. I want to completely disagree and tell you I'm nothing like that at all. But if you talk to my wife, that is probably exactly how I am. I do struggle. I like to plan things out. I feel more comfortable and safe when it's planned out. I feel like it's taken care of. It's accounted for. Again, the problem being with that, I don't do well when it doesn't go according to plan. Like the plan's only great as long as the plan's rolling.
Yeah.
Um, I have been, I so I don't like to say I have anxiety either, though it's very obvious through most of my life what it looked like. It was a fear of trying anything new. It was a fear, like I didn't want to go to a theme park that I'd never been to because I might not know where you go to get tickets, and I don't want to ask, and it just seemed overwhelming, and so I couldn't do it. I would never go there, right? It was restricted and limited to things I had done in my life and accomplished well, and that's the only things I could repeat. My wife and I used to try to go out to dinner, and we would get in like vicious arguments on the way to the place to eat because I was terrified that there wouldn't be something on the menu I liked. Like this is so that's what I see my anxiety, and I'm like, well, I don't fucking live like that anymore. I don't have anxiety, right? And that's just not the case. I think I still do. I do still have a shit ton of thoughts going on at all times. I joke with my family because my 5-year-old doesn't shut the fuck up ever. And I joke that like there's already 16 voices in my head, and his is just one too fucking many for me, right? He drives me crazy. It's very difficult for me to sit and just listen to him nonstop talk for like half an hour. Maybe he just reminds me of my anxiety because he doesn't stop. I don't know, but it's overwhelming. I know right now I'm going through like extra. So I smoked for 20 years, and then I quit that like 4.5 years ago by vaping, and now I just quit vaping 2 days ago, and so like 25 years of having something to do regularly to kind of calm myself, and I don't fucking have that now, and I'm like going out. If I wasn't going bald, I would be from pulling my hair out for sure. Like it's brutal, man. I'm used to having that comfort, and I'm saying things like life's just miserable without that. Like, what the fuck? Why do I want to keep doing this dumb shit if I don't get to, have a little fun? And I enjoyed it. And like, I mean, there might be some truth to that, to some of those things, but I don't like, why the fuck do I need that to be okay? Right. And that's where I keep coming to. Why is life not okay if I can't vape or smoke or something? Like, why can't it just be okay? And so I've been feeling some extra anxiety lately, and irritability and annoyance and disconnection from my family through all that, and just want to, I don't know. I probably shouldn't say what I really want to do to them all. But yeah, so I get just sitting still is tough, man. I've been sitting in my house for the last couple of days because it's been this Thanksgiving break type time, and not a whole lot of agenda, and bored out of my fucking mind, and not vaping, and I eat, and then I'm like, well, what do I do now? Well, I vape. Well, I don't vape now, so now I guess I fucking eat again. I don't know. Like I just don't stop eating, and I'm want to yell at people and get angry, and then I voice my opinion, and they're like, I'm sorry you feel that way, and I'm like, well, fuck you too, because that's basically all you just said. You invalidated what I said. So I'm with you. I struggle with the anxiety, and I don't know the great idea, because when I make plans, I get mad if they don't go that way.
Yeah. And what's interesting, so putting a couple pieces together, for myself over this past couple of days. So my daughter has a disability called Prader-Willi syndrome. It's a rare genetic disorder. It affects her brain in a couple of different ways, but one of those is this inability to sort of abstract think, and she has a lot of anxiety around food and meals and planning and impulse control and things like that. So a big part of her treatment, a big part of her daily life is very regimented routines. We eat at this time, and this is the meal that we're going to have. Like those things are posted, at her house where she's at. Like all those things are planned out well in advance. So she knows, and there's a schedule. And when she lived at home with us when she was younger, these are some tools that they taught us. Like everything would be planned out so that it would help her with that anxiety. If she wanted to know what we were going to have for dinner, was already posted on the refrigerator. That's what it was for that week.
Right.
And the schedule, the way they had us do a schedule, it was always meant to be a rough type schedule. Like, it wasn't supposed to be completely regimented down to the minute, but it was the order of things. Like, this is the order that the day's going to go. We're going to do, breakfast, and then this, and then this, and then, school. And then, when we come home from school, it's going to be this, and then exercise, and then dinner. And it went in that order all the time. And, so remembering all those things, and when she lived with us and the way she is when she's up there in her program, and being up there around, it was like, wow, like, I think I need that. And I've always said to my wife, like, I do way better with a schedule and a routine than not. Like, for me, I'm better when I get up like the same time 7 days a week. Just get up
Right.
at the same time, go to bed at the same time, and do those sort of routine, regular routine things. I just function better that way. Mentally, I feel sharper that way. So I know that's a thing about myself. And, we're joking. I always feel like to myself, I'm like that character from South Park, Tweak, who's always like amped up on coffee, and wants to go 27 places. It's like, if I don't have that, routine or that schedule sort of in my head of what I'm doing next, like, I want to run around and chase my tail in circles, half the time, or I can't focus on what I really want to do because I'm not sure if that's the best or rightest thing to be doing in that moment.
Right.
And so I'm trying to, and this is all for myself. It's sort of new reflections. I was talking with my wife a little bit about it on our ride, and we were sort of talking about, well, what do you do with that? So, okay, so you have anxiety. There's different things you can do. Obviously, the big thing now that you hear everywhere is, marijuana maintenance and THC, and it's great for PTSD and, anxiety and depression and all pain and everything else. It's the wonder drug of the 21st century, I guess.
Right.
But like, for me, like, as a person in recovery, that's not an option, at least for me right now. I'm going to say no,
Right.
that's not something I want to consider. I don't feel like my anxiety is that bad. And B, that's for me, pretty heavy mind changing, mood altering substance that I can't mess around with. My history is that, that one is too many, 1,000's never enough mentality. And I don't want to even go down that road. It's not worth it at this point. So for me, that's out. There's the CBD, I guess, is the other step down from that, where you don't have the psychoactive component, or you can get it without the psychoactive component. I told her I may take a little bit of time to look into that a little bit, just to do my own sort of research and see what I think and what kind of stuff is out there. Because now, obviously CBD is everywhere. It's in coffee and
Right.
food and supplements, and, just, it's this a miracle, amazing thing, which, again, I'm sure it's not.
Right.
And I have nothing against it, whatever. I love marijuana and THC and all that, that's my problem, is that I love it too much. And then if I'm like, oh, well, now I'm allowed to smoke weed, then I'll just be high all the time. And, back again in my addiction, for a while. So I had been on heroin for a number of years, and I got off heroin and just said, well, I'll just drink and smoke pot. And I did that for another 4 years, and stayed off of heroin. And my life was just as crazy and unmanageable on drinking and smoking pot, because every day that I woke up, I had to get high and be high until I went to bed at night. And that's how I functioned through every moment of every day.
Sounds like my vaping.
Yeah. So, that's my track record with that. So that's not, something for me that is a good option to explore. And I didn't have, I don't know. It's not something I want to check out, but the CBD oil could be interesting. But I tend to go back to, I think most of the time there's more natural, maybe taking a little more work, remedies, but things like making sure I'm meditating on a regular basis. And if I treated, meditation like it was medication, would I do it more? Right now it's sort of this thing that's like an optional thing that I just do for some whatever kind of benefits. And maybe my approach needs to be more of a, hey, this is really like a quote unquote medical necessity for me to meditate. Like it shouldn't be considered like an optional supplement to my day. It should be like, this is like medication that I should be taking for myself every day.
Right.
And if I took that approach with meditation and exercise, and really made those things like, hey, these are like, for me, dealing with anxiety, critical, not, optional things that are like just to enhance my life, but really things that I need to mentally be well. Maybe that's an approach I need to sort of start taking to those activities.
I mean, that could definitely make them seem a little more important if we looked at them like a medicine. I wouldn't, at times when I was really struggling in my life, maybe with a depression, and I ended up on an antidepressant, I didn't feel like it was optional whether I needed to take that on any given day. Like, it was Wednesday, I better fucking take it, right? I mean, it wasn't going to mess me. Of course, it's slow acting. It wasn't going to do it, but similar principle. It wasn't optional for me. You brought up so many different things, trying to touch on each one. You talked about the marijuana, which in general, I don't have any particular issue with. Like, I don't think it's for me. I don't know that it's like, hey, this is great medicine versus, hey, this makes it easier to deal with life. Like, I agree with that. Right. I'm not arguing the benefits of it in that sense.
I definitely didn't want to punch everyone in the face walking around when I was smoking weed all the time.
It's very stress relieving. It's very relaxing. Like, I give it that. I don't know that it's necessarily the greatest way for me to get there. And if people want to do it, look, I'll say this: if alcohol is legal, weed should definitely be fucking legal, right? Like, just looking at those two compared to each other, that's the most ridiculous thing. But yeah, I would agree. Weed's not the answer for me, I don't believe. The CBD oil, which is, marketed as the wonder drug, like every new drug ever is. Obviously, I'm not going to fall into believing that it's going to be that wonderful. Does it do anything? Possibly. Is it going to really fix me? I doubt it. Like, nothing is. You talked about like there being a natural way versus a biological way. So this is a tough one, right? Because there's actually a third part of that too that could be possible. So there's that there could be a harder, more difficult natural way to deal with these things that most of us don't want. We want, the pill Band-Aid form that's easier. There could be that there is no natural, better way to deal with it, and we just are stuck taking the biological solution. And then there's also this other possibility that comes to me frequently, that I like to think that sometimes we're given things for a fucking reason, right? Like, this anxiety keeps me away from the cliff and I don't jump off and die or fall off and die, right? Like, I find purpose for the things that I'm given. And is it always fun to live with? No, it fucking sucks, right? And I do seek ways to try to tolerate it and manage it better. But I always question, am I treating the very thing I'm supposed to have, right? Is this anxiety supposed to be the thing that helps me create the, crazy shelter in the basement of my house where I end up actually surviving, a war because I was anxious. Like, one of my clients said this the other day, and it was like the perfect thing. It was, what if I worry that if I didn't worry, I should have worried. And I was like, yes, you've got it. You've pinned it down perfectly. That's exactly what I think. And so I struggle with that. Like, am I supposed to treat it? Am I supposed to be this way for a reason? Am I supposed to be bored so that I invent something useful? Like, I don't know. Maybe anxiety is leading me somewhere.
Yeah, and I know so in recovery a lot, we talk about fear and, how we should have all this courage, and, fear is this horrible thing that holds us back from life. And I always think the same thing about fear. I'm like, well, it's got some really good characteristics, to it, that, sometimes fear is a really, thing that will save me from either myself or other people. If I start to trust, after some time in recovery, I learned to trust some of those instincts and some of those fears as being healthy.
Yeah.
And it's not all bad all the time. I think for myself, where the anxiety part starts to get to be problematic is, like, say we're just all chilling out, relaxing at a hotel, and I want to yell and scream at all my family to get away from me and leave me alone, or I just want to walk out and leave and just go spend a bunch of time by myself. Which, again, spending time by myself isn't always horrible. Obviously, I can do that in little bits and pieces. I like went off to exercise or whatever by myself, more or less. But what I found was even that wasn't seeming like it was enough. Like, I wanted to be isolated and alone by myself for what wanted to be days.
Right.
And, that's where it's like, wow, maybe this is more than just like, hey, I'm a little anxious here, and
Right.
recognizing, like, what is a healthy level of anxiety. Obviously, we're all going to have a little bit of anxiety, when there's or I would think it's normal to have some anxiety when there's some, uncomfortable issue at work or whatever, dealing with your kid's school, or you're going to have a little
Right.
anxiety in some situations. But it's funny, it's like you said, where it paralyzes me into a place of, even now, still with directions, a lot of times, like, I do not want to ask people for directions, and the fear isn't that I don't know what I'm talking about. For me, the fear around, like, say, directions is that I'm going to go into a place and I'm going to let them know that I am vulnerable and weak, and, like, I don't know where I'm at and I don't know where I'm going, and then they're going to be able to take advantage of me because I put myself into this weak place. And that's what I think a lot. It's like, I can't let all these people know that I don't know where the fuck that I'm at. Like,
Right.
that's scary. That's overwhelmingly scary for me a lot of times. So I think when it's like the character defects, um, in recovery, is sort of a lot of my character defects come from overblown assets. This is the same kind of thing, like some anxiety and some fear, and some of that's good, but when it
Right.
becomes overblown, it becomes a defect.
I'm still trying to picture what these situations are, and I'm not trying to minimize what you're going through, but I was relating it to what I was thinking about, struggling to go and ask people for directions. And I was thinking about, I think, going to a theme park like Hershey Park, and I was like, what is the Hershey Kiss gonna take advantage of me? Like,
Right.
could you put that in context? Like, where were you thinking about asking for directions where they might have took advantage of you?
Oh, so, well, anywhere, for one. Most of the time, it's when we getting into a city that I'm not really familiar with, or going places like that. The other thing is, I've learned to recognize that most of that shit isn't even really like, it's totally impractical and it's totally irrational thought. But
Right.
it's like trying to explain to my wife, like, just because I know it's irrational doesn't just make it go away. That doesn't
Yeah.
just fix it. It's still there and it's still
Right.
real, and it's still, can be overwhelming. I can fake my way through it a lot of times. I think socially I deal with it pretty well. But it doesn't stop the anxiety from being there. Um, yeah, for us especially. So we did our traveling around the country. We went to tons of areas where we had no idea where we were, what we were doing, where we were trying to get.
Right.
Like, we were everywhere we went was new. So it was sort of a constant, trying to figure out where we were going or what we were trying to find.
The funny thing is, I will avoid most of that anxiety by just using Google. But when I really think about it, I should probably have much more anxiety trusting Google to do all this thinking for me. Like, it could easily tell
Right.
me, hey, turn left, drive off this cliff. I wouldn't know the fucking, I'm sure, left I go, right? I don't know. Like,
Well, the other side of that, with when you're driving in a big camper, so we were in a full-size pickup truck towing a 40-foot camper,
right.
in a city. Like, there's certain fucking areas you can't get out of.
Right.
Like,
Right.
you can literally get yourself stuck, not being able to get under a low bridge, or, and we've had those situations too, of where you're going down a road and all of a sudden you see underpass 8'7", and we were 14 feet,
Right.
13.6 anyway. And, so you're like, fuck, we can't go that way. And Google isn't the best at rerouting for campers, and just
Yeah, it doesn't have that mode yet, does it?
right. And there is other software you can use for that. We had some other software, but even that shit, it's not always right. It's sometimes it's wrong, and it tried to take us. We were out in Utah. So we're out in the middle of Utah. We're in the kind of middle of no man's land, and the GPS, and this is a, camper RV GPS, and it wants to turn us onto this dirt road through this national park land. And I'm like, yeah, fuck it, the mapping thing. And my wife actually was like, no way, we are not going on that road with this camper. Like, we're going to fucking get stuck somewhere in the middle of the desert.
Right.
We're not going that way. And we argued about it. We actually got in an argument because the way around was an hour something longer. Like, it was that much of a shortcut. And so I was like, well, we just got to take that way. Like, that's the fucking way that the thing says. I'm going to trust this technology that it knows. And she said, no way, we're not doing it. And so we didn't. I gave in. And smartest decision I ever made, actually, when we got around and talked to some other people about that road, they're like, oh, no, you would have never made it with your camper up that road. Like, people can't even, they get stuck in cars and shit. Like, you need like either a Jeep or at least a 4x4 truck. And even then, it's like these hairpin turns, and it's just like you would have been totally fucked. And then we wouldn't have been able to turn around because there's, you can't turn around a 40-foot camper in a 8-foot wide road. Like, that ain't happening. So it was a good thing I listened to her. But just getting in situations where I'm not prepared, or I don't know the answers, or I gotta ask for help is like, that's overwhelming to my anxiety a lot of times.
One of the other things that kind of came up when you were talking about the different methods of treatment for anxiety and how you sort of attack yours, more regularly with meditation or, excuse me, with trying to burn it off at the gym, because it is a form of energy, and that comes into a lot of, like, if you go to therapy, right? There's sort of the theory of cognitive behavioral therapy versus, more of a dealing with your inner child and feelings from your childhood, right? And so the CBT type thing will give you good coping skills for how to deal with it today, right? Coping skills that can possibly help you alleviate some of the anxiety you're going to feel coming up. Coping skills for after you start feeling it, things to do to lessen it. And I like that idea. It's good to have a few of those, but at the same time, I kind of wonder if, I don't think I'm ever going to learn enough coping skills where that underlying stuff from my childhood is just gone, right? Like, I think that's always going to be there, driving me, guiding me, telling me sort of how my life is going to go. And I don't think that goes away just because I learned some coping skills. The coping skills can minimize the effect of it in the moment, but I really personally believe I need to go back and deal with some of those things in order for them to be alleviated altogether. And I don't know, if that's real, if that's just some shit that I come up with because I believe in therapy or what, but I believe that. Like, I don't think that just coping with it today is great. I think dealing with it so that it doesn't really exist. It's almost like Back to the Future. Like, I can go back and change some of that past through talking that allows it to not really be here in the present.
Yeah, and I've found actually in a thing that helps me a lot, in a skill I learned in recovery, is just talking about it out loud sometimes, helps.
Yeah.
Saying some of the stuff that I'm thinking or what's going through my head in those situations. Again, those voices in my head make all the sense in the world, and they seem so rational and logical, and they seem so, intuitive. But then you say them out loud and you think, wow, that doesn't, like, it sounds so much different when I say it out loud. And sometimes just talking about it and recognizing, like, oh yeah, this is what this is. Like,
right.
It takes a little bit of the power away from it. But in the moment, it still can be pretty overwhelming, which is maybe where some sort of, I'll say, substance or chemical medical assistance could help.
Right.
I find it is way less, it affects me way less now in my life than it did when I was younger or earlier in recovery. And I don't know if that's because coping skills or just I've gotten older, or because I would, like, say, until about a year or two ago, I would have never said that I had anxiety. Like, I didn't even recognize that that's what it was.
Right. So they have anxiety medicine that I'm just not a big fan of. I've never taken it personally myself, but I don't like the idea of it. But I do wish they had more of like almost like if you have a sore throat, they have a throat spray. I wish they had like an anxiety spray, like a short lasting, like just
Right.
for in the moment. Hey, let me spray myself real quick. It'll last 5 minutes and then I'll calm down and things will be great. All right. Well, it looks like we're going to pause for, our advertisement here, and then we will be back.
This episode has been brought to you by Voices of Hope, Inc., a nonprofit, grassroots recovery community organization located in Maryland. Voices of Hope is made up of people in recovery, family members, and allies. Together, members strive to protect the dignity and respect of those that use drugs and those in recovery by advocating for treatment, support resources, and mentoring. Please visit us at www.voicesofhopececilmd.org and consider donating to our cause. All right, so we're back from the break, sticking kind of along the lines of anxiety, and to tie it back into the vaping or smoking.
Right.
With my wife, when she's struggled, and she still vapes now, but over the years, I've tried to get her to quit smoking. Sometimes, forcefully, if they're like fighting and arguing with her about it. But anyway, some of the conversation, she used to say a lot of the same things that you had said about, that's her coping mechanism to deal with anxiety and stress and, whatever. What I had always read or, researched about that nicotine addiction was that it actually creates some of that anxiety that you feel. Like it's like the hook that it gets you. It's like once you're hooked in, when you don't have it, that's all that stirs up all that anxiety. And that part of the addiction is the need for that relief from that anxiety. But it was interesting, she still vapes. We've been trying to talk her into it. I think the kids were a little more successful in pressuring her into quitting than I was. And I had nothing to do with that. I never, told them to pressure her to quit. I, of course, made my subtle smart-ass comments when they were available.
There was just envelopes with $100 bills left under their pillows.
No, but, that's the messaging I guess they get in public now from school or other people or, Plus, we watched my mom smoked her whole life and got COPD and continued to smoke. And, the grandkids all watched their grandmother, in essence, smoke herself literally to death.
Right.
And, I tried to just point that out to them, not in a bad way, but as they were younger, like, hey, don't smoke cigarettes. That's kind of what happens. It messes with your health. I smoked for a long time. I actually quit smoking before I quit using, which is odd, but I went through a thing. So the end of my using was crazy, as most people's is. And it wasn't all this overly traumatic stuff that most people go through. Like, my bottom was just totally weird. So I had been hooked on heroin for years. I went to jail, and so I'd convinced myself when I was in jail, I was there for like 8 months. I said, well, when I get out, I'm not going to do heroin or any hard drugs anymore. Like, that's my problem. It's heroin, cocaine. It's all these heavy drugs. And at that time I was 20, I think 22 or 23. I can't remember. But I was 20 something. It was legal to drink. So I was like, I'll just drink and smoke pot, even though that wasn't legal then, but whatever. And what I found was, like, say, even doing those things, I couldn't manage well. And I always smoked like a crazy addict. I smoked probably 2 packs a day, if not more. But I got to a point where I'm like, all right, fuck it. On sheer willpower, I'm going to quit everything. I'm going to quit drinking. I'm going to quit smoking. I'm going to quit, cigarettes, everything. I'm going to start going to the gym and eating healthy. And I did that for about 3 months, just cold turkey, fucking completely everything. Did that for 3 months. And then it was Preakness. Came to Baltimore, and a bunch of my friends were going down to Preakness, and I said, I got a great idea. I'll be the designated driver. And so I was the designated driver down to Preakness and once we got down there, it was a fucking party. So I started drinking and stuff again, but didn't pick up cigarettes. So I started drinking that day and then went back to drinking and probably smoked weed still, but didn't smoke cigarettes again. And I used for another, I don't know, 4 or 5 months before I actually finally got clean. But that was like the first time in my life that I felt like I had really tried every bit of willpower that I had to stop using. And then, it's like one of those saying, like, willpower just didn't work.
Right. And so, and that's kind of where I'm at with this. So I have not vaped. I think the last bit of juice I had ran out Thanksgiving night around 7 p.m. And since then, I've been committed at least like a week now. Or no, at least a week and a half. A week before I even stopped. I was committed that when that juice ran out, I was quitting. Hell or high water, it was just what I was going to do. I'm mentally committed to that fact, right? Ever since I've stopped, I've had these thoughts throughout the day. Man, you should just go buy one of those stupid little vapes at, Royal Farms or Wawa and just take a hit or two, right? You should go get a Black and Mild and just smoke one of them. That's a little different. That's not the same thing, right? Something different. I'm like bored. I don't know why the fuck I'm bored. I got a billion things I could be doing that are useful, but I'm not going to do them, right? I'm just sitting around my house. I'm like, I fucking do this all day long, every day for the last 25 years. I don't like not doing it. I want to do it. I think it's enjoyable. This is all the shit I'm telling myself. And I buy into most of it, right? Until I start that, my brain starts that whole life's just not fun without it, because that rhetoric sounds way too much like what I believed about drugs, and I don't believe that shit anymore, right? So that's the one that keeps me tied in. Every time I hear that one go through my head, I'm like, that's fucking bullshit. Let me just hang on a little longer, right? And I don't know. Maybe I am fucking miserable without vaping. I have no idea. I know I am today. Will I be in a month? I hope not. I'm hoping that it goes away, but I'm just not going to do it no matter how many thoughts tell me I should. That's where I'm at right now. I don't know what the fuck else to do, but it brings up the question, because everything else I've quit in my life, I never made the commitment to quit it. I had some awful, horrible, terrible life consequences that led me to a point of like, dear God, remove this from me, please, right? Like, I just you got to fucking take this from me. I'm lost. I'm going crazy. And that's not where I'm at today. I'm not lost or going crazy. I'm making a decision, and it feels so much fucking different. Like all the other stuff, I was happy to be rid of those by the time I got there. I'm not happy to be rid of this, and this is fucking difficult for me, and I don't like it.
Yeah, well, maybe that's getting wiser in your older age.
Maybe.
There's always a saying that I heard, and I always liked. It's that smart people learn from their own mistakes, wise people learn from other people's mistakes. And that's kind of, do I need to, and early in my life, like, yes, I needed to have all the same fucking negative consequences that I watched all the other addicts around me have before I finally said, hey, could it really be drugs that are my problem? Nowadays in my life, like with smoking or vaping or any of that stuff, like I feel that way. I'm like, it's been 20 years since I've smoked cigarettes and I never vaped. That wasn't even a thing 20 years ago.
Right.
So, and I don't miss it at all. In fact, now I look back on it like that's a pretty disgusting habit. And I don't place that judgment on people that smoke. I just see it and I'm like, oh, how can you be so, I don't want to say stupid, but how can you be so unintelligent about your personal health? Like, how can you care so little about yourself and your body that you would smoke cigarettes? And me personally, I just put vaping right into that. Like, it's the same. Obviously, we can make all kinds of, quote unquote, comparisons to justify that it's better and all that. I'm like, I don't know. They, what did they tell you 40 years ago about cigarettes? It was the same thing. They just didn't know the damage. Or now maybe they did know the damage and they lied to us about it or whatever. But it's like, we know the negative effects. We see these people getting sick and dying, and all you hear vape defenders say is, well, it was this chemical and they were doing that. And it's the THC ones. And it's not and it's like, okay, sitting on the outside of somebody that doesn't vape. Like, if you told me there was even a chance that I could have like a collapsing lung disease and go into the hospital at any moment from doing this thing, and they think they know it might be on some chemical, but they're not really sure. Like, the smart person would not do it. The smart decision would be to not take the health risk.
No, I hear you. I hear you. I think I never looked at vaping as like, hey, this is like eating my vegetables. It was definitely hey, this seems way less dangerous and intrusive than smoking cigarettes, right? I truly used it in the fact of quitting cigarettes to vape. Like it wasn't hey, let me pick up vaping because it seems cool. It was I've never been able to quit smoking, and this thing actually worked for me. So I will defend it as a quitting cigarettes mechanism. I think it's great for that. I think it works. I think it's a good replacement habit. I know that's not really the answer long term, but it did work a lot for me. And I've found that putting it down has been easier than any time I've put down cigarettes. And that's something I did notice while I was vaping too. I could go longer periods without the problems. Like cigarettes, man, I was having one every half an hour, and you weren't fucking standing in my way.
Right.
Like God, I'd buy the plane ticket that was on top of the plane just to fucking smoke while we were riding. Vaping, it didn't bother me like that. I could go 5 or 6 hours and not think nothing of it if I had to. And so I did look at it as definitely different, and it's been around for, I don't exactly know. I know it's been around for at least 10 years in some form or another. People didn't really start getting sick and dying until real recently, which tells me that it's not so much the vaping itself that's doing that. There is some particular thing that whatever they're trying to do now with it that's making it fucked up. But either way, like I just want to feel, I don't want to be in prison, right? Like that's the goal of being free and in recovery is to try to limit the amount of prisons I got to be in. Like I guess I'm always going to be in some, but this is another one I don't want to have.
So as a person who, for me personally, like one of the great things I think all the time about not smoking is like how much fucking money I've saved over the years of not smoking.
Yeah.
And we had kind of talked before the podcast today a little bit about money. Like, how do you justify that expense? Like, do you compare that expense to, say, fast food or eating out? Or is that like, oh, this is me, this is my thing, so it's okay? You know?
Yeah, no, that's a necessity. I'm vaping. I can't stop that shit. That's just built into the money.
Right.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. It definitely was cheaper than smoking. I'll give it that. But yeah, that is another thing that I will be saving money on from now on.
I don't know if my wife's is cheaper than smoking. God, we buy them vape things are fucking $18 a pack, and I swear she goes through a pack every 2 days.
She's on that high, that high tech shit. I was on some old fashioned stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems very expensive, and I still throw that up to her all the time. Like, this is so expensive. Like, why don't you quit? Think of how much money we could save.
I think where I'm at, and look, I even, going into this quitting, I made a list of all the things that piss me off about vaping. It's like, there are things that bother me. My fucking windows in my car get all stupid, and I got to clean them like real regularly.
Really?
Like
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Oh my God, it fucking annoys the piss out of me, right? That's one of the things I'm happiest about is I'm going to clean them one more time and I'm done. Like I don't have to clean them all the time. Sometimes juice gets in your mouth. I had to charge them pretty frequently. It was like a whole lot of shit that got on my nerves. I guess I just at this point wish there was some fun replacement behavior. Like, is there some fucking cool thing I can do now that I'm not, vaping this neat flavor into my mouth 80,000 times a day? What the fuck can I do? Like, I just want to do something.
Well, I didn't think about it from replacements, but I thought when I quit smoking, I did all the tricks that they told you to do. Like I carried gum, like a big pack of gum, and I would chew gum, and I don't chew gum anymore because I think it's kind of an obnoxious thing. But like it was at the time, like say it was better than smoking, you know. So I also did a thing where it was like the negative reinforcement. So I took a rubber band and kept it around my wrist. And anytime I would want to smoke or think about smoking, I would sit there and just snap it on my wrist. Not overly hard, but just enough to make it irritating and annoying. Wow. And it was like it was supposed to be like a negative reinforcement, almost like a little electrical charge. Like, hey, this is a negative thought. This is not a good thing. And I don't know. I didn't smoke anymore, so I guess it worked or helped. And I don't have a positive view of smoking. so I don't know. Those are little tricks that helped me get through that initial. I mean, I know with me with cigarettes, like, and this is what I would always talk to my wife about. Like, she would quit for a week or two and be like, "Oh, this is still fucking hard." I'm like, "Yeah, it's going to be hard for a while." Like, it took me I bet you it was 2 months before I was pretty comfortable not smoking, just not smoking, and I still thought about it a lot, and
Right.
it was probably 6 months to a year before it was like, "Oh, I don't even think about it anymore."
Wow.
But now it's been so long, like, I don't even it's like, to look at it and think, "Wow, that's such a terrible thing, like, I can't believe I ever even did that to myself." Like shooting drugs, it's like, "Well, I
Right.
can't even fucking believe that I would do that to myself," like
So I used Channix twice during my smoking career, which was a bad fucking idea for me. I
Jen
hated
had a
that shit.
horrible experience with
Yeah,
Chantix
me too. Me too.
Yeah.
So both times, and I worked in construction at the time, and both times I would end up like on the 13th floor of a building we were building that had the sides wide open, and I would be like 5 feet from the edge, just thinking, I could just fucking walk off. Who cares, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck? Why do I? That's crazy. So I had to stop, and then I would. So both times I got about 30 days without smoking before I ended up going back to smoking, and I never experienced the peace of like, I don't wanna
Yeah.
smoke no more. And so that's going to be the tricky part. Like this is fucking day 3, right? And it
Yeah,
sucks.
it's the
And I'm
hardest
hoping
part.
it gets a little better than that.
You never have to go through this again.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, look, the physical withdrawal symptoms are not bad, but you can
Yeah.
see, I'm sure Billy can see sitting across from me. I'm like fidgety as fuck. I mean, I'm usually fidgety anyway, but this is ridiculous. I don't know, man. I just wish I do have the gum. I do have gum. I chew gum. I'm not going to chew it while we're talking on the podcast, but I'm doing that. And I have looked at like, not so much as snap my wrist with a rubber band, but just more of a, every time I think about vaping, use that as a reminder to talk to my higher power, right? Try to turn a negative into a positive. And so I have been doing that a little bit. And it's just like, I know I'm like done with my family. Fuck them. They're getting on my nerves. I'm just done with everything. And I am mad that I have to stop. I guess I don't have to. I'm choosing to, but it's like, why can't there be fun shit sometimes? Why can't you just have some shit that's not good for you and not good for anything? You just do it, right?
But this is like, and I applaud you. Like, I look at the whole thing as like, this is a, practical application, like spiritual principles in action of like, I want to do something that I'm going to say I know is bad or wrong or unhealthy for myself, but I'm making a conscious choice not to go with that impulsive decision.
Right.
And I'm going to practice these principles of commitment and self-love and perseverance, right? And, patience and all these things to try to get through, satisfying that, self-centered, self-serving craving, because that's really what it is.
Yeah.
And there are rewards to that. Like, and that's how, for me personally, like that's how I've learned to practice a lot of these spiritual principles. It's not like they just came all naturally and it was great and fun, to practice forgiveness. Like there was, it's an active thing of like, God, fuck that motherfucker. Like, I just want to stab him in their neck, like, but then go like, and saying that in my head. And then the countering to that of being like, no, I've made a decision that I'm going to let this go. I'm going to turn this over to the universe, and I'm not going to carry that anger. And I'm making the decision just right now, just in this moment, that I'm going to let that go. And I'm not going to give in to that anger and trying to let those thoughts go and not feed into them. And it's the same thing. It's, like making that positive negative inventory. Why am I making this decision? Do the positives really outweigh the negatives? I mean, fuck it. If the negatives outweigh the positives, then fuck it. Go back to vaping, make the list and see where you fall.
See, that's tricky though, because am I only coming up with positives and negatives? I feel like that's based on what I really want to do. So like I could very easily make vaping sound like it's the better option and ignore all the actual positives that might be there, if that's what I want. And I don't even know if that's a good enough reason to go back just because I want to already. I know that, right? But I'm hoping that there will come a day through not doing it that it won't seem like the thing to do anymore. I think if I made a positive negative inventory right now, that'd be fucking shaky. I might go get one, right? And I don't want to.
Well, your values have to fall in there too. Like, it doesn't just matter which side of the list is longer. It matters which of your values are more important. You know what I mean? Like, I can rattle off 15 reasons why smoking weed could be good for me, but it doesn't outweigh the few of the negative things that I feel like those are way more important values. For me, like my present, like how present I am with my kids and with my family on a daily basis outweighs 10 justifications to go smoke pot. Like it's that one thing carries way more weight. So I have to look at the values that go into that list too. It can't just be a list of counting up the tallies. It's got to be a
Right.
list of where my values are in that list.
I don't know. I just want the day to fucking come where I don't feel like I'm missing it anymore. That's going to be a nice day. Right?
It will.
Yeah.
It is there. It will happen.
I believe that, or I wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't believe it, right?
That's the hope, right? Just like addiction. It's the hope. It can happen for you too.
Yeah.
It will happen for you too.
That one day I'll be at like lunchtime and be like, oh, I didn't even think about vaping yet today. That's crazy. It'll be that same miracle that happened with using.
Yeah.
Right. I just didn't realize one day that I hadn't thought about it.
And then after a while, you can become a self-righteous prick like me and go, look at those fucking people vaping with their fucking kids in the car. What an asshole.
Dude, I couldn't wait to quit smoking and be that self-righteous. Right. Honestly, I was like, God, that shit stinks, right? I love you, but that shit stinks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might be there with vaping too. I never thought about it.
I tend to do it more. I joke about that. I try to do it more like for me, I still remind myself of the money. Like, man, the money. Like, because when I smoked, cigarettes were not whatever they are now, $7 a pack. I think they were probably 20 years ago, probably $3 or $4 a pack. I think they were still less than $5. You could get cartons for like $50, I think. So, $45, $50. So what's that? $5 a pack. Now I think they're twice that. It's crazy. But, I just remind myself, like, over those years, I got to reinforce some of those positive decisions, because a lot of my friends vape and I think, oh, that looks cool and it's all healthy. And I'm like, nah, I'm not, I'm not going to go down that road. It's not worth it. Like,
you have to vape the CBD oil. Right. 2 birds in one stone there.
Now I'll just vape CBD oil and,
right.
See if that helps my anxiety. No, definitely not. I have learned that a value for me is I care about my body and my health. And I don't just want to get old, for the sake of being old. I want to be healthy into my old age. And, it's a big value for me. Like, if I'm 80 and somebody's pushing me around in a wheelchair and I can't fucking walk up the steps, then I don't want to be 80. I'll die at 75.
See, I'm all right with that one, but I interesting you bring this up. I'm having a lot of this in my life lately. So my wife's grandmother is 92, I believe, and she does not seem happy. Ever with life. Like, she's always in pain. She's always uncomfortable. She can't really do much of anything. She doesn't really leave her house. And it's just like, why? Right? And not for her. I'm not like, why is that bitch still living? Like, no, it's not like that. I just, even her, like, so she's in an in-law suite at my mother's parents' house. But she'll come over sometimes, and it's like, it's a huge effort and day of work for her to make it from one side of the house to the other with her walker, right? And the other part is that, like, there's the constant fear of, oh my God, is she going to trip over something and die, or like right here, right now? Like, this is scary, right? But she makes this noise when she's doing any effort or any exertion. And it's like, it sounds like a noise of somebody that's, close to death. And I'm just like, wow. I don't want to be to a point where I can't fucking leave my house, right? I don't want to be to a point where I'm no longer able to live. And then, so we go and we see my mother recently, and she's talking about, her oldest remaining sibling is pretty much losing their mind too. And I'm just like, I just don't fucking think I want that. Like, I don't think I want to live to be old enough to where I'm not here anymore. That doesn't sound interesting.
I definitely don't. And I saw this. So when I first met my wife, her dad was, I think he was in his 70s, and he was in a wheelchair. He had diabetes. They had cut off his leg from the knee down. And then he had some heart issues and had a, whole bucket full of pills that he took every day, and just couldn't do a lot for himself. And we kind of lived there and helped to take care of him, helped to take care of the house and all these things. And he would say things like that, like, my life is over and I'm just ready for this one to be over. And I would think, like, oh my God, Nick, why would you say those things? Like, that's so terrible,
Right.
And I didn't get it at the time. So learning about him a little bit. So he had the house that we were living in. It was his house. He actually built that house himself from the ground up. He was given some property when he married my wife's mother and built a house on it himself and did all the work and laid the brick and built the roof and all that stuff.
Right.
And that's the kind of person that he was. Very self-sufficient, very capable physically of doing hard work. And he worked in I think a mushroom plant for most of his life. And he just was a hard worker, physical labor type person, and enjoyed doing that kind of stuff. Really liked it. And so to be stuck in a chair where he couldn't really even do certain things for himself was, like, I would say, I'm going to use my own words, but I'd say a little bit humiliating, a little bit, and it took a lot away from his life. And I didn't understand why he would not want to be alive there. But now in my life, I totally get it. Like, I totally get it. And I watched the opposite. So my mom was the opposite. She had COPD, and she, like, hung on and fought death to the very last minute, mostly because she was scared of death. She had an incredible amount of fear over dying. And that was tough to watch. There was times, because her health was so bad. I mean, like, you talk about, she couldn't even get up and walk across a room with a walker, let alone, like, eat or talk. Like, she was to the point where she would talk and you didn't even know what she was saying. And it was really tough to watch. And there were times, I think both my sister and I just sort of thought, why don't we just, like, quadruple her medication and let her just go to sleep? Because of the level of suffering, but she wouldn't let go because of fear. So that was really tough to watch too.
Yeah. It's not an easy topic, or look, I might very well feel very fucking different when I'm 75 and people are like, hey, why don't you just die off? That's what you said before, right?
Right.
I don't know, man. I want to be here, and if I can't be fully here, right? And I can be in a limited mobile capacity. I think I can tolerate that. I want my whole brain working. I feel like there's something I can do with that, even if I can't get around. Like a wheelchair, okay, all right, maybe I got to wheel myself around, but I can wheel myself somewhere and do something useful with my brain. I feel like that's the important part of me anyway.
I'm praying for technology. Come on, technology.
Put my brain in a jar?
Yeah, let's use all this
Yes.
science and AI for fucking health. Let's stop, creating algorithms to generate fucking advertising for Google, and let's start focusing on healthcare. God damn it!
I don't know, man. I don't know. So I get the feeling that they could, like, find a way to put a brain in a machine and it would live forever, and they wouldn't choose my brain. They'd choose some rich idiot's brain, like Trump or something, and he'd be fucking living forever with his wonderful, greatness.
I saw Ray Kurzweil and some of his craziness. He's a technology sci-fi thinker guy, and he says a lot of that. We can upload our brains into computers and stay living indefinitely,
but it'll only be the rich idiots that do it.
Yeah. Well, and I have some other
get to participate
opinions. I think, when you look at consciousness actually extends out through your physical body, things like that. So whatever. But it's fun to hear, people just theorize and pontificate on all that shit. I find it fascinating.
I truly think 70 years of me is probably enough for the world. I don't think they need any more of me. That's probably plenty.
But just think, if you had your brain in a robot body, then you could vape all the fuck you wanted, and there wouldn't be any negative consequences.
It probably still would. It would probably fucking, like, rust the inside of the fucking robot or something.
Yeah, right.
God damn it. It would ruin it.
It wouldn't be fun anymore. Oh, well.
I don't know. What the fuck did we talk about today? Anxiety, vaping?
Yeah.
I have no clue. Death?
Sort of.
Death, anxiety, and vaping. I don't know how the hell that went together, but whatever. You got anything else?
No, I think I'm talked out.
Yeah, I am too. It's been a rough week. Hopefully next week I'm feeling better from not vaping, and definitely, hopefully next week I have still not vaped, because that would be fucking terrible.
Yeah. Now we're on the countdown. Day 3.
Day 3. Next week will be day 10. I need to get. That just sounds shitty though. I need like day 100 or
Just
something.
for today. Just for today.
One day at a time. I'm not gonna vape, guys. All right. I guess we'll see you sometime in the near future. That wraps up this episode. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on your preferred platform. If you have ideas for topics you'd like us to talk about, or just want to add an opinion, contact us through Anchor, email us at recoverysortof@gmail.com, or find us on Twitter @recoverysortof.